Hello everyone and welcome back to another short history documentary style video, very much another untold history one. And today we're looking at the year 1936. Am I going to be talking about the World War II build up? Not exactly actually. We're going to be looking at a country that is in the midst of a fascist period of extreme far-right sympathies and ideals, many anti-Semitic or racist. No, I'm not talking about Germany or Austria or even Italy. I'm talking about my own country, Britain, which indeed in 1936 was plunged into a very far-right sympathetic movement that nearly saw it align with the Axis powers if some cards were played differently. This is 1936, when Britain indeed became fascist. Source of the link down in the description. Let's begin. First of all, for anyone who doesn't, do history or politics, the word fascist refers to a political ideology which is the antipolar of communism, one that expresses authoritarian views and xenophobic and creates an idea of superiority. There are no taxes, there is no poor, and anyone who disagrees with the regime is usually executed or form some form of genocidal cause. That's the definition of fascism. So it was January the 20th, 1936, and King George V had just died, and that's basically where this whole snowball, I think, starts to occur. Because we have a new king. No, it's not George VI or Elizabeth II. In fact, this king is very much unheard of. I think on Pointless, you actually would get 0 if you said his name. Maybe I'm getting mixed up with another TV show. But anyway, this is Edward VIII, who was nothing at all like any other Edward who came before him, I assure you. Particularly not, Edward II, who was literally like, yay. But anyway, Edward VIII, who reigned from January 1936, and of course we'll talk about that later, what happened after that. So 20th January 1936, Edward VIII, formerly Duke of Windsor, Duke of Windsor after he abdicated, Prince of Wales, of course, heir to the throne, became monarch. However, he himself was in a dilemma. For 1936, he wanted to marry Wallis Simpson, that was his lover. But the problem at the time was the fact that she was, well, partly American, but mostly because of the fact she was being divorced beforehand, so it wouldn't look very good on the royal family, American, an American widow. Well, no, American just divorcee, it wouldn't look very good on the royal family. However, Edward VIII, this was not the main problem, at least if you're, like a leftist or Jewish. If for Edward VIII, the problem with Edward VIII was the fact that he had very deep, as we followed on from 1936, people look at Westminster archives, they made short documentaries about it on BBC. And that is the fact they found that he had very strong Nazi sympathies. And they knew at the time he had very strong Nazi sympathies and rightist sympathies. He collaborated with people like Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. And in 1936 Olympic Games, there were many reports of him doing the Nazi salute. And, however, in 1936, Edward VIII, following some criticism, many political actually, because weirdly, the public did like Edward VIII, because of course, with rightist things, as of course come, the racism, but also does come the British Empire. He was very much an imperialist, Edward VIII. He had great contributions to India. He was Emperor of India, of course, for that time, and many people did actually like him. Of course, many of this political stuff we now know today of him, idea of being him fascist, was only found, like I said, later in Westminster archives. Not just in 1936, but of course he did everything like this. And following his abdication in December of 1936, of course, King George VI came to the throne, and unfortunately later on he would live out, he would actually live quite a nice exile in Duke of Windsor, which his name now was. However, throughout the Second World War, he constantly sympathised and actually supported the bombing of Britain and British cities, and he supported the Nazi cause of Mussolini and Adolf Hitler particularly, and would later go on to talk to Adolf Hitler, and betrayed very anti-Semitic and rightist views for a king. Which is why Edward VIII is now known as simply, the fascist king, the Nazi king, or the simply traitor king. So that was Edward VIII. So Edward VIII, Britain's fascist year. Why did we not come fascist from Edward VIII? Well, mainly because he abdicated on his own accord, and politicians disagreed with him on the sort of, the people at the top actually disagreed with him, which I suppose in this situation made it quicker to oust him. However, let's look at the other end of the scale. How the bottom people managed to oppose fascism, and that is the second part of this video. Of course, leading on the fact Berlin Olympics have happened, people like Jesse Owens have stood up the fascist cause, so anti-fascist movements are growing. However, another key individual, a British key individual, when you look at 1936, that almost caused Britain, I think the main factor that almost caused Britain to be fascist was that of Oswald Mosley, who created his own party. He was a politician. He created his own party, an independent party that quickly was not independent because of how quickly it gained momentum. Was the BUF, the British Union of Fascists, which later go on. We'll talk about that later. I'm going to really try and be careful to stick to politically factual stuff here. That's why I'm squabbling a bit. I do apologise. But the BUF, British Union of Fascists, led by Oswald Mosley, and literally just wore the armband with the fascist lightning symbol, and wore black suits, black shirts, brown like the SS in Nazi Germany, and accumulated quite a significant amount of support, particularly with the richer, but also a good amount of poorer people with fascism that like to target the rich, but also the poor. All the reason for problems are X, Y, Z, and then people support them. That was Oswald Mosley, and he was quickly gaining support in Britain. And by the 4th of October 1936, he had around 3,000 members ready to march with him across Cable Street in London. We were very, very densely Jewish and communist and immigrant-heavy trade unions as well. That's what I was looking for. Area of London and Britain. However, the police actually had the support of him, and the police supported the fascist Oswald Mosley because he was a politician, and also the police had permission to make sure they were able to march through. Unfortunately for Oswald Mosley, this did not happen. Many communists and Jewish barricaded Cable Street and actually, put turned trucks over, some steel in the road, ironwork to stop them marching through, blocking streets. However, when they did start amassing in massive crowds, the people, the anti-fascists, started actually standing in the streets, stopping them walking through, pushing them back. The police intervened and started hitting some of the protesters, as well as the fascists hitting some of the protesters. However, in the end, the anti-fascists did win the day, and Oswald Mosley was unable to march, and he was told by the police, basically, you need to leave the city to afford to stop further unpopularity from happening. And after 1936, the BUF did gain members, but by 1938 and of course 1939, during the Second World War, this number greatly decreased, and Oswald Mosley was under high alert during the Second World War. So Oswald Mosley and the fascist cause for Britain, and every couple as well, Edward VIII, to answer the question of this YouTube video, why didn't fascism start in Britain in 1936? Well, I think two key factors. Politicians did not like Edward VIII, so it would be very hard for him to be paid as sort of a fascist king when no one really likes him at the top. At the end of the day, Edward VIII answers, particularly in the 1930s, he answers to the top, the key British politicians. If they don't like him, and if he wants to marry Wallis Simpson, he's probably going to abdicate, which he eventually did. He loved her more than he wanted to do with Britain. And of course, you can still be, like a fascist in another country. And as for Oswald Mosley, well, again, it kind of goes back to, I think, this key thing we see constantly throughout British history. I think it's sometimes often overlooked. It's Britain, like with, the Peterloo Massacre, 1936, March on Cable Street, the Pilgrimage of Grace, all these things that are massive sort of, let's go against monarchy, or let's go against the authority in Britain, come on, let's, even be a republic for crying out loud. Do you know what I mean? All these key moments in British history when there's a massive protest about to happen. It does happen, but afterwards, it doesn't have enough support. The authorities or people can put it down, and it fails to gain momentum, and that's what happened here in 1936. Yet again, there was an opportunity for it to be fascist, and it could have succeeded. But again, the British were the British, and their allegiance were to, the new cultural change. There are more number of immigrants in the country now. There are more people to oppose the fascist cause, and that happened. So 1936, by the end of the year, fascism were defeated at Cable Street. King George VI was now on the throne. He was much more nicer than George V and his brother Edward VIII. And Britain would, of course, be fully ready. World War II, and of course by 1945 there was victory, and any idea of fascism in Britain was long destroyed. As for the BUF, that will later go on to now be turned into other political parties and would transform to be like UKIP and Reform Britain and the Heritage Party. So thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did. Like I said, source in the description, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Put in the comment section anything you want me to talk about for another short historical documentary. That was Britain's fascist year, 1936. Goodbye.